Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The lecture hall on Kestrel Station was built like a bunker. Not because the architects had poor taste, though the gray alloy panels and thick blast shutters didn't exactly scream academic charm, but because the Kestrel exchange program had been designed for one purpose: controlled cultural contact between species that had spent the last 6 centuries avoiding each other. And in controlled contact, you prepared for panic. Tiered seating rose around a central pit where instructors paced, projected diagrams, and tried to convince a room full of predators, grazers, climbers, burrowers, and swimmers that sharing oxygen was, in fact, normal. Cadet Hale Mercer, Earthborn human, Deathworld adapted, stamped across his file in a red ink that didn't exist for anyone else, sat 3 rows from the top, elbows on his desk, chin in his hands, and eyes half-lidded with boredom. Next to him, a Taliri female named Sesha kept her posture rigidly perfect. Her species looked like someone had stretched a fox into a sleek, long-limbed runner and then added delicate frills along the neck that fluttered when she was anxious, which for the last hour had been always. At the front of the room, Professor Uhl, an arthropoid educator with 4 arms and a voice like dry paper, clicked his mandibles against the microphone. Today, Uhl announced, we examine psychological deterrence. Specifically, acoustic predation cues and the instinctive response patterns across sapient lineages. A ripple went through the room. Antennae lifted, pupils narrowed. Several students instinctively checked the exits. Sesha's frills tightened. Hale did not move. Professor Uhl gestured, and the holo projector above the pit brightened, displaying a simple title: Audio Simulation, Apex Predator Vocalizations. Remember, Uhl said, this is a controlled environment. No physical threat is present. Your task is to observe your own physiological response and record it for later comparison. A few of the grazers' tall, antlered runes swallowed so hard Hale could hear it. A pair of insectoid Karai students folded their wings against their backs like shields. Sesha leaned toward Hale and whispered, if you freeze you may faint. It is normal, do not be ashamed. Hale blinked at her, then smiled faintly. I'll do my best. You do not sound concerned. I'm more curious than worried. Sesha's frills trembled. Curious of predator sounds? Hale shrugged. Sounds are sounds. Professor Uhl lifted one claw. Simulation 1. The room lights dimmed. The air vents seemed louder. Somewhere in the station, a distant engine throbbed. Then the sound hit them. A deep rolling growl filled the lecture hall, vibrating through the metal benches. It was not a simple noise. It was layered, low thunder under a rasping snarl, a sound that promised teeth and weight and hunger. Several students recoiled so sharply their chairs screeched. Arun dropped his stylus. A Taliri in the front row emitted a sharp alarm bark and scrambled backward, nearly tumbling off his seat. Someone's breathing turned into a rapid, panicked whistle. Sesha's frills flared wide, her hands clenched, nails digging into her own palm. Hale's shoulders rose slightly. Then he chuckled, not a nervous laugh, not a strained, brittle sound. A real, amused chuckle, like he'd just heard a familiar joke. The lecture hall went quiet in a way no professor could command. Every head turned toward the human. Sesha stared at him as if his face had rearranged itself into something impossible. Hale, she hissed, what is wrong with you? Hale wiped at one eye, still smiling. Sorry, that's just funny. Professor Uhl lowered his claw slowly. Cadet Mercer, he said, voice tight, explain. Hale lifted his hands in a small surrender gesture. It's just that's a big cat. Several students made choking noises. A cat, Sesha repeated, as if the word itself tasted poisonous. Yeah, Hale said, Earth feline, the recordings probably from a lion or a tiger. Professor Uhl's mandibles clicked faster, a sign of agitation. A lion is categorized as an apex predator. A tiger is categorized as an apex predator. Your amusement indicates either ignorance or familiarity, Hale offered. I grew up hearing those sounds in documentaries, zoos. Sometimes on my phone when I couldn't sleep. He glanced around at the wide eyes. Also, there's a smaller version we keep as pets. The room collectively malfunctioned. A Karai student's wings snapped open in shock, buzzing loudly. Arun's antlers dipped as if bracing for impact. Sesha's frills collapsed against her neck. You keep apex predators as pets, not lions, Hale said quickly. House cats, smaller, still predators, but they're basically furry roommates that demand snacks. Professor Uhl looked as though his entire curriculum had been personally insulted. He signaled and the audio cut off. Silence fell heavy and uncertain. Class, Uhl said, let us proceed with scientific rigor. Simulation 2. Sesha grabbed Hale's sleeve. Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Please tell me you are not going to laugh again. Hale tried to look serious. No promises. Professor Uhl activated the second clip. This one began softly, an irregular clicking and chittering like pebbles struck together, punctuated by a wet, drawn-out hiss. It crawled along the nerves, less powerful than the first but somehow more invasive, like something skittering in the dark. The insectoid students went rigid. Several of them pressed their palms to their thoraxes as if steadying their hearts. A Karai in the lower rows emitted a sharp, distressed chirp. Sesha's frills fluttered again. That one is worse, she whispered, voice thin. It sounds like hunger without shape. Hale's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward listening, and then he said very calmly, that's a cockroach. Sesha stared at him. You are making words. No, seriously, Hale said. That's an earth cockroach or something close. The hiss is probably wings rubbing. The clicking's legs, we hate them. The room exploded into overlapping reactions, confusion, horror, outrage. Professor Uhl slapped two claws down on the podium. Silence. The sound cut off again. Professor's antennae quivered. Cadet Mercer, Uhl said, your species originates from a planet classified by the Interstellar Biodiversity Council as Category 9 hazardous. You are telling this class you possess domesticated predators and infestation vermin in your civilian habitats? Hale shrugged. Earth is a lot. We do pest control. Your pest is considered a predator. It's a scavenger, but yeah, it can bite. Mostly it just survives. It's kind of impressive in a gross way. Sesha looked like she was trying to decide whether to faint, run, or file a formal complaint with the universe. Professor Uhl's voice lowered, almost reverent in its disbelief. You have evolved in an ecosystem where apex predators roar loudly enough to shake metal, and your reaction is humor. Hale tilted his head. I mean, if you grew up with it, it's just part of the soundtrack. Uhl's eyes, compound and unreadable, fixed on him. We have prepared a final simulation. I advise you to maintain composure. A murmur of dread moved through the room. Even the bold students sat straighter. This was the part of the lesson where the professor demonstrated why deterrence worked, where the most primal fears were pressed like buttons. Hale flexed his fingers. Sesha's frills tightened as if bracing for a blow. Professor Uhl raised his claw. Simulation 3, Unknown Predator. The lights dimmed further, leaving only the projector's glow. A single sound emerged, soft at first. A low, rhythmic thrum like distant machinery. Then it sharpened into something else, a vibration that rose and fell, buzzing through the air with a steady, predatory patience. Beneath it, a faint clicking, almost a melody. The class reacted instantly. The Taliri yelped and tried to climb over their desks. The rune froze, eyes wide, muscles locked. Several of the smaller species curled into protective balls. A Karai student dropped to the floor, wings shielding his head. Sesha's frills flared so hard they trembled. Her pupils dilated into dark pools. She made a thin, strangled sound and grabbed Hale's arm with both hands. Hale listened. His expression changed not to fear but to something like recognition laced with annoyance. Oh, he said. The sound continued building. A few students began to cry out, unable to help themselves. Professor Uhl watched, documenting reactions on a floating chart. Hale cleared his throat. That's a mosquito. Professor Uhl paused mid-note. A what? A mosquito, Hale repeated. Little flying insect, drinks blood, that buzz, that's the wings. You don't hear it until it's close, which is the whole problem. The room did not relax. If anything, some students looked more terrified. Sesha's grip tightened until Hale felt her nails through his sleeve. It drinks blood. Yeah, Hale said. Tiny amount. It's more annoying than dangerous most of the time unless it carries disease. The word disease hit the room like a second predator. Professor Uhl slowly lowered the claw that controlled the audio. The buzzing stopped. A silence followed that felt different from the first one, no longer simple shock, but a dawning recalculation. Professor Uhl's voice was very careful. Your world contains organisms that hunt through sound, through stealth, through parasitism. Hale nodded. Yep. And you have developed familiarity to the point of laughter. Not laughter at the danger, Hale said, more like an old enemy you know too well. Sesha's frills slowly eased, though her eyes stayed wide. How do you sleep? She whispered, knowing that your sky contains blood drinkers that sing before they feed. Hale snorted. We use nets, repellents, screens, we invent stuff, we adapt. A rune student in the lower row raised a trembling hand. Cadet Mercer, he said, voice thick, is it true that some Earth predators mimic voices to lure prey? Hale paused. Some birds do, some insects, and there are stories about big predators that imitate cries. But mostly it's not like the horror vids. Nature doesn't need theatrics. Professor Uhl's mandibles clicked slowly now, not agitation, something closer to contemplation. This lesson, Uhl said, was designed to demonstrate deterrence. That fear is a tool that a predator's sound can control a space without physical presence. He looked around the room at the shaken faces, and yet one student did not respond as expected. Hale raised a hand slightly. To be fair, I did respond, I just processed it different. Professor Uhl angled his head. Explain your processing. Hale leaned back, considering the best way to put it without sounding like a lunatic. Back home, he said, we don't get to pretend danger is optional. We build cities knowing storms can tear roofs off. We farm knowing pests can wipe out crops. We hike knowing something with claws might be watching. He glanced at the projector where the title still hovered. So we learn, we label things. We figure out what a sound means. Is it a lion? Don't go there. Is it a mosquito? Cover up. Is it a cat? Let it inside because it'll sleep on your face and somehow you'll love it. A few students made noise of disbelief at sleep on your face. Hale continued, voice steady. Fear is useful. It keeps you alive. But if you let it control you, you don't build anything. You don't explore. You don't become. Sesha's frills fluttered softly, less panic now, more awe. Professor Uhl's gaze moved to his chart of physiological spikes. Most students were still elevated. Hale's line, however, showed short peaks followed by a quick return to baseline. Rapid recovery, Uhl murmured. Cognitive reclassification rather than sustained panic. Hale smiled faintly. That's a fancy way of saying I know what it is. Professor Uhl folded two arms behind his back. Cadet Mercer, he said, the Interstellar Council has long maintained that Deathworld species are inherently unstable, that their stress thresholds are incompatible with civilized cooperation. The room leaned in, attention sharpened by fear and curiosity. Uhl's voice carried, crisp and deliberate. Yet you did not respond with aggression. You did not respond with collapse. You responded with evaluation. Hale lifted his eyebrows. We've had practice. A Taliri student, still pale around the muzzle, asked in a shaky voice, what do humans do when the predator is real? Hale didn't answer immediately. The humor faded from his eyes. When it's real, he said quietly, we get serious, we warn each other, we make a plan, and we fight if we have to. He looked around the room. But we don't waste energy panicking at shadows, we save it for what actually matters. Sesha swallowed. And the blood drinker, Hale's smile returned, sharper this time. We swat it, the class stared. Just like that, someone whispered. Hale mimed the motion, flat palm, quick strike. Like that, or we trap it, or we poison it, or we invent a gadget that zaps it out of the air. Humans hate being hunted by something smaller than a fingernail. Professor Uhl's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. Apex behavior, he said, and several students flinched at the word. Not by physical dominance alone, but by refusal to accept the predator's terms. Hale shrugged again, almost sheepish. We're stubborn. Uhl turned to the board and with a precise motion altered the day's lesson title. Audio simulation, predator vocalizations became audio simulation, threat interpretation and response. Class, Uhl said, we have learned something unexpected. Not that predators are frightening, we already knew that. He faced them fully. We have learned that fear is not universal. Context matters. Knowledge matters. The training matters. His eyes settled on Hale. And we have learned that some species do not simply endure a hostile world. Uhl's voice deepened, resonating through the bunker-like room. They study it, they name it, they domesticate it. A murmur rose, half admiration, half horror. Sesha leaned toward Hale and whispered very softly, you laughed because you were not helpless. Hale looked at her, surprised by the clarity. Yeah, he admitted. I guess I did. Sesha's frills lifted, not in panic now, but in something like pride by association. Then perhaps, she said, our program is not doomed. Hale smirked. Not unless the cafeteria serves earth cockroaches. She made a noise somewhere between a gasp and a laugh, an unwilling, startled burst. Several nearby students glanced over, shocked by that too, a Taliri laughing. Professor Uhl cleared his throat, bringing order back with practiced authority. For your assignment, he announced, you will each select one fear response you experienced today and analyze how it could be altered through training, knowledge, or environmental adjustment. He paused, then added, almost reluctantly, Cadet Mercer will provide supplemental commentary on Earth-based deterrence practices, including, he hesitated as if the word itself was dangerous, domestic predator integration. Hale raised 2 fingers. Do I get extra credit if I bring pictures? The room tensed again then, like a wave breaking in reverse. Some students made small, nervous sounds that could have been laughter. Professor Uhl stared for a moment. Then his mandibles clicked in a pattern Hale had learned meant amused resignation. Proceed, Uhl said. As the class began to gather their things, Sesha kept her grip on Hale's sleeve, not out of fear now, but as if anchoring herself to something solid. Hale, she said, voice low, if your world teaches you to laugh at predator sounds, what does it teach you to fear? Hale's eyes drifted toward the sealed lecture hall doors, beyond which waited a station full of species trying not to misunderstand each other. He thought of storms and fire and hunger. He thought of history. He thought of humans meeting the unknown and deciding it was theirs to survive. Then he answered honestly. Wasting what we've got, he said. Not trying, giving up before we start. Sesha's frills fluttered once like a small flag catching a new wind. Then, she whispered, perhaps your species is not a Deathworld problem. Hale slung his bag over his shoulder. Yeah, Sesha nodded, eyes bright. Perhaps you are a Deathworld solution. Hale grinned, and for the first time in the bunker-like hall, the sound wasn't a predator call at all. It was the sound of someone who had heard the monster in the dark, named it, and decided it didn't get to own the room.